And we are live. Hello, everyone. So, welcome to Consciousness Unfiltered. I am Dr. Anthony Mattis, and I am joined by my very good friend, Susanna Mittermaier. Susanna, thank you so much for being on this call. Susanna is actually a licensed clinical psychologist and an author of this book called Pragmatic Psychology: Practical Tools for Being Crazy Happy. Which is a perfect time for people to be reading this book in these times, huh? With depression and suicide and alcoholism and drug addiction, escalating during these cooped up times and stuff like that. So anyway, and you're also an access consciousness facilitator as well, and you've been facilitating the tools of access consciousness for a really, really long time. And so I'd really love for you to kind of share with us a little bit about yourself, where were you before access, and how has access kind of changed your life, not just personally, but as a professional?
Good question. I don't actually really remember who I was before access. It's like when your past no longer becomes relevant, it's hard to remember. I remember I tried to be normal. I never was. I was always one of those very different. I don't know, but people always. I didn't find myself different, but people said that about me, and but there was a time, especially when after high school and when people say now you have to find what you want to do, which is really hard for us seekers. You're like, oh, I want to do lots of stuff. What do you mean?
Yeah.
One thing, so. I remember I tried so many things, so many jobs, and then I did so many different studies to find what I want to do. And then one day I really sat down and I'm like, what do I really want? Because I never asked myself that question. I never really asked, what do I want? I was very aware of what other people needed or wanted my life to be like. But this is the first time I'm like, okay, what do I want? And so I sat down and I remember it was something around showing people how awesome they are. Because I saw all these people, not finding themselves awesome. I saw them being awesome. I'm like, I want them to see how amazing they are. And so I looked through the university study book to try to find what matched that.
The closest thing, yeah.
That, the closest thing, and it was a very thick book. And then the closest thing that I could find is studying to become a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the only education I ever, besides school, I ever finished, which my family was like, hallelujah, that's amazing. and before I started to become a teacher and all this other stuff. Anyway, yeah. So, and then I started to work in first in child oncology and then in a psychiatric hospital with people with all kinds of diagnoses. And I'm like, yay, now my work is going to be all about showing people how awesome they are. And then, I did how I was taught to do, and it was not what I thought it would be. And so very early in my what it's called professional life, I had this thing in my world. What else? I didn't say that, but I had it in my world. What else is possible here? Yeah. Because I had the doctors were, referring all these people to me with, this is a hopeless case and you have to do therapy with them. And I, did psychotherapy back in the days, and it's also hopeless and da-da-da. And then I met these people and I'm like, I don't see what you see. What do you mean hopeless? Is this just an awesome person seeing the world in a different way? What can we contribute? And that was I noticed then what was normal for me was not normal for others on how to see the world. And I'm like, okay, so what else is possible here? And then I found Access, had conversations with Gary Douglas, the founder of Access. And then Pragmatic Psychology was created.
So where did this all take place? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to university? You're not from the United States.
No.
So where are you from? Tell us where you're from and all that stuff. And where did you do university?
Obviously, looking for words. That's so funny. Thanks for, asking this, because I always forget. So I grew up in Vienna, Austria.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
went to high school there, la la la. And then when I was 16, I wanted to get out. So I actually went to Houston, Texas, and went to high school there. And then back again to Austria. And then I wanted to get out again. And then I found a way to study in Sweden, which is Northern Europe. And that's where I did my education. And this is also where I started to work in the hospitals.
And so when you had that, like, so when you were out there working as a psychologist, right, and you had that moment of like, wait, this doesn't really match what I thought it was going to be. It's not really allowing, like, say more about that moment and what actually started going through your mind. It's like you went and you got this education. Here you are, you're a licensed, clinical psychologist. You know what's possible, right? Because it's the way you really function naturally. And yet your title and your license wasn't quite matching that. And then comes access. But like, say more about that, maybe the frustrations as a professional that went along with that.
Well, I must say I was very confused by the perspective, by the paradigm that is normal in our world, which is looking at the problem and then looking for the reason and then finding a solution. And I saw, okay, this is how most of the people see the world, and somehow I'm wired and have been wired different probably when I came in, because when I saw these people who were quote unquote having a problem or a diagnosis, yes, I hear what you say, but then I see a person, and that person just functions differently.
Yeah.
And that difference is actually a resource that if we don't have the point, like our point of view creates a reality. So if we have the point of view, okay, this person is wrong, that's what we see. But then, seeing, okay, this is just a person who functions different. They see the world in a totally different way. They see things other people don't see. And that's just like, it's not part of the bell curve, no, but that's the gift, that's exactly where you can start to use this as a resource, where if the person would be acknowledged for that, like, hey, look, this is not wrong. This is where you function different. Like, find out more about that difference. And then let's find a way to harness, to use this as a possibility, as a resource to create your life the way only you can and the way it works for you. And that's where the word pragmatic comes in, doing what works. Because the other paradigm that's normal in our world is the dramatic. It's like everything is a problem, everything is wrong. And then this is where just like it's a totally different perspective.
Yeah. So when access came along, sort of like, so where were you at that point? Like, how long were you sort of like in the midst of like, oh man, this is not like, here, I'm this psychologist here, and I know that there's something else possible, but they're telling me to do it this way, but this way isn't quite working. From that point to when did access show up? And then when did you actually start incorporating the access tools and just really creating your own way with working with people?
Well, it was about in the first year. I'm a very impatient person, so I'm not. I'm too lazy for tolerating things that are heavy. So it was in the first year, and I tried to do the way I was educated, but I'm like, there must be a different way. There must be a different way. And then about a year, and then I actually implemented it right away. First I used the tools on myself, and I'm like, okay, that matches more of what I know. And then I, implemented it, right away with the people I worked with.
What were those tools that you implemented? Could you share a couple of those for like new people who've never done access?
Right. So many different, there was the perspective of how do I work as a practitioner, as a psychologist and therapist, and also what tools work for people who are different. So it's like different things. So the one, like, I remember, like, as a professional, whatever that means, as a practitioner, I was very tired. I was drained out after having patient after patient after patient. And I'm like, because I was taught to protect myself. People said, okay, here are those people who have depression and, this diagnosis, anxiety, whatever. And I was taught, okay, you need to put up a barrier between you and them. And I was exhausted, because that I realized, that barrier, which is supposedly protecting me, is actually draining me from energy.
Yeah.
So I learned to not have a barrier.
Mm.
I learned to be, as you have to show, unfiltered, like no filters, just like, hi, here I
Yeah.
am, here are you. What can I contribute to you? And I learned to receive, I
Mm.
learned to receive from, like, I didn't have to, I changed my point of view from, this is something that if I don't have the berries, I will take it home and I will
Mm.
have it in my body and I will not get rid of it. Like this paranoia that professionals
Yeah.
are taught to have. And paranoia takes a lot of energy. So I learned to not be paranoid. I learned to receive everything, let
Right.
it go through
Yeah.
me. Like there's nothing that can hurt me. People have a lot of problems. That doesn't hurt me. People have substance abuse, depression, ADHD, ADD, whatever they diagnose. They're not
Mm.
they're not hurting me. They're like,
Right.
if I just receive whatever they are and let it go through me, it's actually a contribution.
Yeah.
And I learned that it gives me so much information on how they function, how they see the world, which then helps me help them, And before them, I would, have to protect, which is really like, it takes away a lot of awareness on, like, you don't get as much information from the patient. If you have the point of view, you have to put a barrier up. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that immediately changed. And I had so much more energy in my work,
So like vulnerability, you
Yeah.
you decided that, hey, resurrecting these walls and barriers of protection required more effort, right? And then so while you're working to keep those walls and barriers up to quote unquote protect yourself from their insanity, you actually learn to lower your barriers, and you had no points of view. One thing I know about you is you have no judgment in your universe. You really do receive everybody, the good and the bad and the ugly, which is really amazing, and what makes you a great facilitator of the tools, and also a psychologist too, which is awesome, and the world needs more of that.
Wow. And thank you for that. Thank you so much. And it's like what you just said is such an important key. It's the allowance.
Yeah.
The allowance. And wow, that's so cool. Thank you for that. Because that's what I also like, if you compare to like what we were taught in our professional education, both of us, is like, we were supposed to have points of view. We were supposed to have a result in mind when we work with people. You're supposed to, like, somebody comes for a session, whatever is the body or something else, you're supposed to achieve something.
Yeah.
And that's actually a projected result. That's a point of view. That's a judgment. But then that's another filter that takes you away from what can be created with that person.
Yeah.
And if they want to change, cool. If they don't want to change, that's actually their choice. And it's us. It's our job to be an allowance. And the greatest way we can facilitate change is to be an allowance of ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And especially also of the people we work with. And that's such a healing factor, the allowance.
Totally. Oh my God, there's so many different ways we can even go with just that one little piece, because when your barriers are down, when you're not functioning from a paradigm in which your client or patient has to go through, then you don't have to be in judgment of them, and they don't have to be in judgment of themselves if maybe your method isn't working. So when the barriers are down, you actually have total awareness. And you can really function from that space of, okay, what else is possible? What does this person require right now? And then you start using the tools and extrapolate from whatever resources you have available to you at that time. That's amazing. And so, as you know that my children very well, and you know that my first wife committed suicide. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder long before I even met her, and decided to go into relationship and make babies and all that. How do you see, like, I guess, like, the world of mental illness? I know it's a very taboo topic. People don't like to talk about it. Even those people who've been diagnosed, it's like they're always looking for this, like, other piece, and it's like they go into judgment about it, so much so that they don't even look for the tools that can maybe help them. It's weird. It's like almost like this avoidance of what's going on, because there's so much. Let's say more about just mental illness. What do you know? And if you could, like, maybe share the difference between traditional psychology and what you've learned to use with the tools of access consciousness and pragmatic psychology, in which you've created and developed.
Well, mental illness and all its names, categories and diagnosis. There's so many aspects to it. And it's like one of it is people love to categorize.
Yeah.
When something is out of the box, we got to name it. Question is, do we? And even if we name it, what if we don't make it significant? And what I mean with that is like if as soon as we name something, it's like you can do the same. If you take an example, like if you just, mentioned your kids, if you just got a child and you were a person and you were, this and this, and then suddenly you are a dad, you're a mom, like if we take this as a category, like what do people do? Okay, what does it mean to be a mom? Oh my God. Okay, how do I have to act now? How do I have to,
Oh my God.
what can I do? What can I not do?
Yeah.
So it's like any kind of category, any kind of diagnosis, any kind of name or label or definition is a limitation by definition. It's like where people identify themselves. Now I am a mom, I am bipolar, I am, an anxious person. And it takes away from what else am I? Like, who am I beyond all of this? Like people, it's like it has this comforting side in the beginning, and I saw this because I did a lot of neuropsychological testings, where the doctor says, "Oh, does this person have this diagnosis?" And it was my job to test. And then and it was always people who were like out of the box, different. Nobody knew how to deal with them. They didn't know how to deal with themselves, and then they got this diagnosis, and then they went, now I know why I'm so, effed up. Now I know why people can't deal with me. And like, it was this moment of, this comfort. Now I have an answer, which is great. It's like, but we could also treat it as an acknowledgement. Yes, you are different. And yes, there might be this name for this, but this is one tiny little part of who you are, Like, what if you take this diagnosis as a, how do you say in English? A jumping board, like a
springboard into something.
Yes. Yeah, like a springboard to something that shows you what else you can use this difference for and as, But this is something we could move towards,
Well, with my first wife, I would watch her fight against that diagnosis so much so that when, let's say, if she was in the middle of an episode, so to speak, it was like she wouldn't acknowledge it, like, right? So then we can say, hey, what else is possible here? It's like, if you're choosing this, what is this actually creating? And so there was like so much energy to fight against the labels. So it's like I've seen it go both ways.
Yeah, it is both ways. Yeah.
So okay, so we have the definitions that the traditional realm creates. With pragmatic psychology, like I know you can't say what you would do because it's a process with everybody. Yeah. But just a couple of like highlights. Yeah.
Sure.
What would you do? Absolutely. How would you approach that person?
And thanks for saying that, because it's like, it's huge. It's a whole thing, So, but like, what do you do? How do you start? Like, okay, this is advanced, kids. You start by asking a question. So whenever you find yourself having an answer, a definition, a point of view, you just go, okay, first you acknowledge, okay, I'm having a point of view here. I'm having a definition. I bought a point of view about myself. This is a very important first step to even realize that you are trapping yourself in definition. Number one, like raising your awareness that there's actually, an answer going on. Number two, ask a question about it. Like, this is how you melt the insanity of answers and categories. It's where you ask, okay, so the thing that I call bipolar, anxiety, hey, what is it really? And it's not a general thing. It's not like, oh, bipolar is always, anxiety is always. It's right. No, it might be similar, but it's oftentimes something specific for the person. And oftentimes people realize, wow, everything is the opposite of what it appears to be. Like, really, the thing that I called anxiety is actually not anxiety. It's actually something, it's something that I have suppressed in me that is actually a power, a potency. It's very often an awareness, a power, a potency, a capacity that hasn't been acknowledged. It has been, shifted into the opposite, which is a limitation medication or a diagnosis or something.
Mm-hmm. So when you hear a lot of these things, depression, insomnia, anxiety, bipolar, borderline personality, and they say, well, this is my chemical imbalance. What what do you have to say about that particular point of view?
Well, so if you have a point of view, I have, and it's a very fixed point of view. Well, what are you creating in your body? It's like, what is created in your body with the point of view you have. Like, people so underestimate what their points of view create and how powerful their
Mm,
points of view are. And we've seen in our work, both of us, over and over again, when people change their points of view, they change what's going on in their bodies. It's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, big time. And the chemicals, like for example. So with pragmatic psychology, what would you like to see
Hmm.
happen in the world as a result of that? Like, what
Holy
would you like your
moly.
legacy to be like
Yeah.
for our planet?
Wow, I love that question. And just like the very moment you like before you finish saying, it's like this energy coming up for, like, okay, so imagine as if everybody had, like, every household had those tools
Mm,
that we use ourselves in our daily life. If people, if it wouldn't be about looking what's wrong, but looking for what's right about you, what's strong about you, and about empowering ourselves and
mm,
empowering people. And we would create a different world. Right now, people are love to create themselves as followers. They're like waiting for someone else to tell them what to do or not to do. And we could actually, have a world where people don't just go, can you tell me what I should do or what kind of life I should live to be a right and good person? But where people actually find out what's true for them
mm,
and what makes them happy and what makes them be alive,
mm.
and thrive rather than just having a life. And that's something I would like to see,
Awesome.
and yeah.
That's one of the gifts that that I've personally found and been able to see in facilitating all over the world as you as well, is like the tools have this way of empowering people to know what they know and to bring out whatever their unique capacities are in their gifts, so that it's not stuffed inside, it's not locked away, and it kind of turns on itself when it's not being expressed. So it really truly is a gift, and there's so many different available resources within the world of access, right? And it's like pragmatic psychology is one of them, and the abuse classes and body processes and verbal processes. You have that. You have right recovery for you have, gosh, even stuff about money, benevolent capitalism, and all this amazing stuff. And we even have a technique to deal with these points on your head to sort of like basically do a disk fragmentation for your computer, but only for your brain, cleaning out all the different viruses and stuff like that are kind of slowing you down. It really truly is a gift. So how can people find you?
Well, there's the webpage SusannaMittermaier.com. There's pragmaticpsychology.com. And there's also, like last week, we launched a new book, which is Advanced Pragmatic Psychology.
Oh,
It's,
cool.
yeah, Gary Douglas and I wrote it together. So it just came out really recently, and it's advancedpragmaticpsychology.com. And
Oh,
it's so it's only in English right now. Like, all other books are translated. And there's the fairy tale family book I wrote, and then one children's book, Who is Henry, which is about a peacock, who's like enjoys his difference.
so you have 4 books
Goes
out in
on
the
a
world.
journey. Say what?
That's 4 books you have out in the world.
Yeah. So
Nice.
now that's the fourth book that came out last week. So, and there's all kinds of stuff. So if you just go and look for Pragmatic Psychology also on Spotify with the podcasts and the webpage, there's a lot of stuff out there and videos and things you can enjoy.
What a gift. What a gift you are to the world. It's like, gosh, going back almost 30 years ago, it's like I couldn't wait to go to a therapist. And I would find myself telling them all my life problems, like, basically all my skeletons I had in my closet. I was like, here you go. Now fix me. And all it was just me talking. And I would walk out of there being like, but nothing changed. I'm still, And so what a gift you are to the world to actually be able to provide people with the tools so that they can actually have more of themselves and really sort of, I don't want to say get a handle, but sort of just know that being different is not a wrongness. and it's a strongness, and that's what these tools actually create for people. And to actually have a psychologist in the world doing that and having that available, I mean, it really, really is a true gift. So if you're someone who's struggling out there, please look up Susanna, because she's a trained professional and she uses the tools of access consciousness. I know they've changed my life. They've taken, you can hear my story, check out my story on one of the other podcasts I've done, and it's changed my children's life. And man, we would have given anything to have someone like you when we were going through some of those shitty times. So thank you for who you are and how you show up in the world. Thank you for being a space of allowance and no judgment,
Yeah.
and being a pal, but also just being an awesome facilitator and stuff, and an example of what a facilitator should be. So I'm super grateful for you.
So much, Anthony, and thank you really, really mega much. And thank you for everything you do. I mean, really, guys, check Anthony out, which I'm sure you do, but do it more.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being with us, and look forward to seeing you soon when these restrictions go away.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Love you lots. Bye.
Love you.